Welcome to the Get It Done podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Ryan. Today we're interviewing Nick Carpenter. Let's get it done. All right, the Get It Done podcast is sponsored by Team Get It Done. And today we're interviewing Nick Carpenter. And, if you're in the mortgage industry, Nick really doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to do my best to say a little bit about Nick. He's a master in mortgage marketing, particularly in the realm of agent attraction, which is something that I think is becoming more and more really relevant in our industry. He is the leader of the Legion of Loan Officers, which is a group of people that are closing $1 billion in mortgage loans every single month. There's even an internal group called the Cabal. I know him as an Iraq war veteran. He's a great husband, father, and man, just all around great guy. Nick, welcome to the Get It Done podcast.
Man, thank you so much. That intro got me crunk, man. I was getting hyped up from that intro song. That was awesome.
Brother, that's awesome. Thanks for the compliment. Well, we're going to get right into this. The Get It Done podcast is really all about the come up story. And we use Elon Musk as an example. He has a great story from going from a million to $1 billion. And that's an awesome story. Great. But what we're really looking for is the 0 to $1 million story, the come up story. And we have a lot to get into. So I want to start out with really where you started your life, Nick. Where were you born? What were your parents like? What were like the first few years of your childhood like?
Yeah, so I was actually born in New Orleans, Louisiana. My dad, he was in the Navy. So he was stationed in New Orleans. And so we only lived there for a couple years. My whole life growing up, we always just moved around every 2 or 3, 4 years. And that was just kind of how it was. Even now, I feel like that's still in my blood and how I'm kind of built at this point. But we always just grew up on Navy bases. So, we could call us like medium to low poor, the military isn't known for exactly their high pay, but obviously we had everything that we needed. My parents always did a great job of taking care of us. My dad was full-time in the Navy. My mom would work kind of, I could call them random jobs, maybe at a grocery store. She worked as an accountant, an accounting office for a little bit, a credit collection agency, just sort of different things depending on where we lived. But she could never really establish a career necessarily, because of the fact that we moved around every 2 or 3, 4 years. So she just did, sort of random things just to have extra money for us. But man, that's, my brother, he's 6 years younger than me. And so his name is Brian. And, we work together today. And so, yeah, just our whole life growing up as Navy brats all the way up until the time that I went into the Air Force myself.
Wow. So I have to imagine. So like me as a kid, I moved around like, I don't know, twice. And like that was detrimental to me. Like, I feel like I'm still recovering from it 30 years later. I guess, you were saying like that was kind of just like the way that your life was. I guess, were you used to that, or did it affect you?
Oh yeah, there's definitely an effect, both positive and negative. On the positive side, I've seen tons of America, and I've got to experience a lot of things that otherwise we probably would have never experienced, from living in Georgia to Virginia Beach, Michigan, California. I mean, we've really seen like pretty much all of America as kids. And so that part was really awesome, being able to travel and just do things. But, obviously on the negative side, it comes around friendships, where you're leaving friendships every 3 or 4 years. So a lot of people that have like these great memories of their friends in kindergarten and, elementary school and stuff, I don't really have those kind of memories. I have some relationships with people from high school, but even that, not really, because I only even knew those people for a few years. So a lot of the relationships I have today are since I've been an adult and either from the military when I was in the Air Force or that sort of thing. But, the friendships, you get to meet people and become friends pretty quickly as military brats, especially on base, because everybody knows we all deal with the same thing. Moving every 2 to 4 years is pretty typical with the Navy. And so, that's both the positive and negatives. Like you can become friends really fast, but also like every summer, that people are going to be coming and going every single summer.
I mean, it makes a ton of sense why you are in this industry, and because I think that and are successful, because I mean, even at a young age, you're making friends with people really quick. And I think that that's a skill that's really learned. Go really deep with somebody really fast, but then know that like it might not work out, and but you still have to do it and kind of turn that around. So a good friend of ours, Renee Rodriguez, he talks about how, and I think we met actually at an Amplify event, at AmpCon actually.
Yeah.
He talks about everything we do in our lives is to either really honor our past or to heal our past, and it's generally something that happens between 9 and 13 years old, or 8 and 12, something in that type of year range. What are you looking to honor? What are you looking to heal, Nick?
Yeah, for me, a lot of times what I, especially when I look at what I'm doing today, a lot of times I just think of the word camaraderie. And I saw that with my dad. I experienced it with him. There's a thing for people that don't know much about the Navy, when you become a chief in the Navy, which is an E7. So if you're an enlisted guy, you're working your way up, you become an E7. So now you're a chief. Actually, the uniform's completely different. They call them khakis. So that basically you become like, you could call it, an executive or high-end supervisor or whatever, and you change your uniform. You're not wearing like the doers uniform where they're wearing blue jeans or just different like uniforms that are made to more get dirty or be doing the work. Now you're wearing like a boss's uniform. And when you go through that process, you get selected by existing chiefs. So it's, existing chiefs are picking who gets to come up. So it's a pretty interesting process. But there's sort of this same kind of fraternal hazing that occurs where they make you do stuff that's really embarrassing or gross or whatever as part of this kind of. Now I don't know exactly what the Navy's like today. I'm sure it's way more easygoing if I was going to take a stab. But like my dad would have to do things like eat a egg on a popsicle stick that was frozen, or drink a live goldfish, or like dunk your head in this like disgusting grog bowl and try to get out an apple. I remember he had to carry around a donut in his mouth at a softball game, and he couldn't eat the donut. He just had to carry it around in his mouth. Another guy had to drag this like 8-foot beach ball behind him with a piece of rope. They had attached it around his waist. He was playing a softball game, and they made him wear that the whole game. And, it's all these kind of things. That's not necessarily going to hurt anybody or whatever, but it just, gets your ego going or whatever. But I witnessed all that kind of stuff when I was a kid. And just growing up with my dad in that kind of role. And, the Navy, when the chiefs on base, they have this place called the Goat Locker, which is where the chiefs only can hang out. Nobody else can go there. And so we'd get to go there and hang out with my dad and, his friends and really witnessing that camaraderie. If I think back about being a kid and, what am I doing now that is from that era, it definitely comes back to that sense of belonging and camaraderie and friendship and support and stuff that the Navy chiefs all showed with each other. It was pretty awesome to watch.
Well, brother, I've talked to a lot of people that are in the Legion, and I would say that everybody's very well connected, and camaraderie is, I don't know if that's necessarily like the word that they would have said, but that's I guess what emanates from that entire group of people is that, we're all brothers here together, and, everybody's really just sharpening everybody else. Iron sharpens iron. And that's the vibe that I get out of it as an outsider looking in anyway. And brother, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, if you have to go through that type of hazing, and I feel like the mortgage industry is that way almost, like you call 40 realtors on a Monday type of a thing, and you get basically just your face kicked in. And, and you really can only relate to someone that's already done that. Like that's hard to relate from an outsider looking in. Somebody that's in insurance or even a real estate agent too. It's hard to relate from a loan officer point of view, what it's like to get hung up on, what it's like to, ask somebody to meet up for coffee and them telling you no, or a lead hanging up on you. Speak a little bit more to that. Because I know that's kind of where you led yourself. And I don't want to go too far ahead, but that camaraderie, does that help people, I guess, get past those like entry level jobs in mortgage? Is that like what you're trying to help people to do? Like get past the hazing, get past that that part of their lives into the GOAT locker room?
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's such a great way to say it. I've never really thought of it like that myself, but it's an interesting way that you put it for sure. And it's certainly possible. A lot of times people that are coming to me that are, if I look at my very best case studies, right? And I mean, I could give out some stories and name some names and things, but certainly capable of doing that if you want to get into it later. But if I think about it right now, when somebody comes to me and they're freaking desperate, right? They are, they're closing some business, they're making a little bit of money, but they hate their life, man. Most people coming to me, that are my best people, they just like hate where they're at in their life, and they hate the sucking up to the realtors and this kind of stuff. And oftentimes they're just doing the only thing they know what to do, which is the Monday cold calls, right? It's the reason I talk about it so much, is because it's the only thing half the industry knows how to do, is just call 40 realtors every Monday. And I hope you eke out some success at some point. And I hate that. I hate the way that it's like that. I was the realtor getting called and like abusing and using loan officers and taking all their money and all this stuff. Like I was that agent in 2005. And so now I fight against that guy, right? I mean, I fight against that relationship, and I want the loan officers to feel powerful. Most loan officers do not feel powerful. They feel fucking weak. And it's sad, right? And they only feel weak because of the way they're being trained to build a business is a weak way to build a business. They have no authority, no position. There's nobody telling them like, dude, you are amazing. Like, just go out here and just do these things and like set yourself up for, people throw around the word value all the time right now, right? It's like, oh, you gotta be valuable, bring value. But nobody tells you what that is. They just still tell you to cold call realtors on Monday. And it's like having coffee valuable, right? So sometimes you just need somewhere that you can go when something goes wrong and being like, man, this really sucks that this happened to me today. And I got this crazy response. And sometimes you need somewhere to go brag, like, yo, it's locked in this gigantic realtor. That it's not appropriate to do that on your personal profile, right?
Right.
So if you don't, a lot of people don't have that place to go and say like, yo, everybody that's going to celebrate with me, this is amazing that this just happened. I believe that this just occurred. And sometimes people want to belong to something bigger than themselves, right? It's the reason gangs exist. It's the reason car clubs exist and anything else. And the Legion is just an extension of all that same type of camaraderie where people have, whether you're winning or losing, like, I'm going to be there. Whatever commitment somebody comes to me with, I'm going to match that commitment. Like, we're going to make somebody win. They just got to be willing to like maybe be a little uncomfortable. But yeah, man, it's a lot about that support. Most people don't feel supported. They just feel like they're on their own and they're just trying to figure it out and do everything. And like, how do I do this? And nobody's really telling them like, dude, you're amazing. You can do this. Like, it's already inside of you. Everything you need to know is already there. Like, take these little small steps. And I love being that person for other people that are like in that position of like, man, they know they're amazing at this industry, but they're just not communicating that message across filters. They're not getting that opportunity. And I love creating that bridge with people and figuring out how to get people more opportunity.
Brother, I love all of that. So many places I can go with it. Right away, the feeling by themselves, that alone feeling, yeah, man, 100%. Like, as a loan officer with 14 years of experience under my belt, like, I've been there so many times in my career, and I've been in the positions where, like you were mentioning, like people that they come to you with, like, they're like, this is my last straw. Like, I'm at wit's end. I hate my life. And I actually have interviewed Casey, and Casey says flat out, like, yeah, I sold my truck. It was my last dollar to join the Legion, and it changed my life forever. But he came there he was desperate. He was literally the point where he told me that he called. He was like, you better be legit, dude. And thank God that it is. But I mean, at the same time, you got to do some work. And I want to go back to this. So you mentioned, like, look, I want loan officers to feel powerful, feel like they're valued, because they are. And not just this suck up to a real estate agent type of a thing. And maybe those are bad words to use. I think, like, because here we have real estate agents that listen to the show, and I don't want to sound like I'm condescending to the real estate crowd, but there are a lot of users out there. There's a lot of users in the mortgage space too. I mean, there's a lot of bad people, I guess, in it, but there's a lot of really good people that get caught up in the wrong things. And I want to talk specifically about the 40 realtors on a Monday call. I don't necessarily myself, just to play devil's advocate, I don't think that it is necessarily all bad. I think that it's good in the general, I guess, discipline of it. But I truly believe in my heart of hearts that worked really well 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, even. I would even argue to a certain extent 10 years ago. But here's where the industry is going. And correct me if I'm wrong with this. And this is kind of where I want to go with it. I want to talk about 40 calls a little bit more, but I believe that you're going to open up your phone one day and you're going to say, hey, Siri, I need a mortgage. And then here's what's going to happen. You're going to get a list of actually, here's 15 years down the road. It's going to be, you're already pre-approved. You're pre-approved up to this. Here's your payment range. Would you like me to send a pre-approval letter to the agent that we recommend? And then it's going to, when it's time for closing, it's going to say your payment, cash to close, term, how much interest you pay over the life of the loan, and then like, would you like to confirm this with a loan officer? I think they're still going to click the button. I think they're still going to be like, talk to that loan officer, even if it's spelled out perfectly on one screen. You don't even have to scroll. They're going to be like, talk to the loan officer, and then you're going to be like, all right, yep, yep, push the button. It's good. It's legit. Yep, I think that the person that is saying the yep, it's legit is going to be the person that develops a brand, that develops, a different type of value that's not in our industry currently. I know I'm going a lot of places with that, but speak to that. What do you think? Is that what you think it's going to?
Yeah. I mean, definitely agree with what you're saying there. Now, you mentioned about the realtors. And so to talk about that for a second is that realtors are trained to ask for other people to pay money to them. It's just the way they're trained. They're trained that from agencies. They're trained that from Zillow and Realtor.com. It's just part. I was trained the same way. It's right. It's why I always went to loan officers and said, "Hey, listen, I want to run this magazine ad. It's going to cost me $400. How much are you willing to put in on it?" And you can be the lender at the top. And lenders would pay for it for a few months, and if it worked out, or if it didn't, I'd go get another lender, because there's always a lender willing to give you money. I'll guarantee you that there's always a lender willing to give you money if you're a real estate agent, because oftentimes that's the value proposition lenders believe they have is call realtors on Monday and ask them, what can I help you with? And pay for stuff when they need help with marketing. Because if you say no, they're going to leave you. And that's the end of that relationship, right? That's, if a realtor leaves, odds are they're never coming back. So, it's the one thing you never want to do. And it's the reason why loan officers are willing to pay $1,000 a month for Realtor.com, $800 for Zillow, $1,100 for Opcity or Boomtown, or all these different tools that loan officers pay for, because those salespeople tell the realtor, just go to your lender and they're going to pay for this, right? And Realtor.com will call the lender sometimes and ask for the money. It's just part of the pitch. So if you don't have value, and in your heart that you are no different than any other loan officer in the market, it's a very difficult thing to say no to. It's very difficult. And because if that realtor leaves, and if you look at the average production of loan officers, how many realtor partners people have, they need every agent. If an agent leaves, it's a big deal. And so you don't want to lose the relationship, so you're willing to pay because it's what you know to do. So does that make sense on that end?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to dig deeper with it, and then I want to go to the future of the market. You really aren't any different. Here, put it like this: if you do Tuesday updates, you update your clients and your real estate partners about what's happening with the loan throughout the whole process. You close on time. You have market rates, market fees. You're available to work at pre-approval letter at nights on weekends, and like all those things. I'm sorry, but that should just be understood as a mortgage loan officer. It's nothing special. It is nothing special. Everybody does that. I would argue too, the worst loan officer does that. And to differentiate yourself is not, it is difficult, because that's the job, is to do all those things. And listen, man, I'll follow up with your leads and I'll call them really quick. Well, I mean, you better, how is that different than anything else? And I mean, so yeah, to differentiate yourself, you have to. I think especially so moving forward into the future.
Yeah, I mean, some loan officers, there's a lot of ways to try to differentiate, right? Some people are using HomeBot. That's definitely, that's a differentiator in some cases. Some people use list reports, right? That's a differentiator in some cases. Some people, do some stuff that we're doing with classes or maybe running some ads. And, the truth is marketing is like Buddhism. There's like 10,000 ways to enlightenment, right? You just got to figure out what's your thing and go for it. A lot of times people are just like dabbling around and stuff really lightly, and they're not just like, okay, this worked so well for me, I'm going all in on this thing. And, so there are a lot of ways to achieve, to create differentiators. Some cost money, some don't. Sometimes it's a matter of time or knowledge or, investing in different things or resources, or maybe you getting John Maxwell certified. Like there's all these different kinds of things that you can do out here to, show that they're different. Because the truth is, the hardest deal to get is the very first deal. If you can get that deal from a realtor and you do what you said you're going to do, which is all the stuff you mentioned, then your odds are you're going to get another one, right? And realtors are like, well, I'm going to keep working with this guy until he pisses me off, and then I'm going to switch to somebody else that didn't piss me off yet, right? And it's just this pattern. So, I think that's the reason why you got to start creating camaraderie and friendship and stuff with your realtors, is because, if we're friends and I mess up, maybe you're going to give me another chance because we're friends. But if it's just a business relationship or it's a money-based relationship, even worse, then realtors can just kick you to the curb because they can easily go get another loan officer to pay. I guarantee you that, right? 100%. You call 10 loan officers, one of them is going to pick up the phone and pay for the thing you're asking them to pay for, even if you've never done business together, because they feel like it's a foot in the door.
100%. I 100% agree. But it's like, how do you get out of that, I guess, is the thing. And I mean, there's a million different ways. And we'll talk about it a little bit more deeply with what the Legion does in a minute. But here, while we're on it, because I've kind of just spilled the beans on what the future is going to be like. What do you think the future is going to be like? I guess if you were going to add to that or subtract to it, how would it be different than what I was saying? How would it be, I guess, go more in depth about it?
Yeah. I think the future definitely is leaning more towards like bigger teams, people that know how to generate leads, do some of these things. Like, oftentimes there's either getting more people or having better processes or, any of these kind of things. Like as you start scaling up and you can solve problems for people at a higher level, then oftentimes I think you're going to see these bigger teams continue to grow bigger. People that are willing to put themselves out there, that are doing things on social media. I think all of that is going to, as people are growing a brand and getting known, I think all of that is going to start leaning more towards creating bigger teams, having more, junior loan officers, loan officer assistants, even people that are just paid on a salary or, like a salary and a small bips versus being paid on full commission. I think you can start seeing more salary paid people, because if I can take somebody and pay them $5,000 a month, and they're super feel really safe and secure and confident, and that's $5,000 a month. And then they can get some bonus so they end up making a little more, maybe they're making $6,000 a month. I mean, for a lot of places in America, maybe not in San Diego or Miami or something, but like for most of America, if you pay somebody $6,000 a month, like that's really good money. And, depending on how your business is set up. Right. So I think the future is going to lean towards some of that kind of stuff. But also it's like, how are you creating relationships? So to me, it's getting away from the one-on-one dating, which is what occurs today with loan officers, right? Loan officers call 40 realtors on Monday. I mean, if you just do the math, right? If you call 40 loan officers or 40 realtors, let's say 20% answer the phone. So that's like 8 people are going to answer the phone. So if 8 people answer, maybe you can get 3 or 4 of them to agree to a meeting. I don't know, right? So let's just say you get 3 to agree to a meeting. One of them's going to no-show you. So you get 2 meetings, and maybe one of those people ends up working out. So, you spend like half a day on Monday cold calling people, and then let's just call it like an hour meeting with a realtor. So you're spending maybe 5 or 6 hours to get a realtor partner. And it's not that the math doesn't work out on that. I mean, if you, extrapolate that out, it probably does work out pretty well. But it's also a very difficult way to have a differentiator or attract agents in a way that, like, it's always better if somebody comes to you than if you go to them, right? And that's what I think the biggest thing is in the mortgage business. We're always going to realtors, and with oftentimes the same pitch that they're already hearing from other people. So it's how do you either get them to come to you, or how do you go to them with something that's an offer they haven't heard before, any of that kind of thing. And we had an idea on how to do this. Well, I mean, I have a pretty solid idea on how to do it just because I've helped a lot of people do it, but I've never personally put it into practice, right? A lot of my, this whole like process, because the truth is I've never had an NMLS number. I still don't have an NMLS number. I've never done a loan. It's just this weird way that I ended up here today. And, through like being a realtor, then building a mortgage marketing team at Benchmark, for 4 years, and then going off on my own and like figuring out how to put it all together, where I really teach real estate marketing to loan officers today. And it's a way that you can have all these arrows in your quiver, and when you need to pull one out, you pull one out, and you're like, oh, you need help with that thing? Oh, I got you, man. I can help you solve that. Right. And now all of a sudden you're the like fixer, you're the solutions guy. And if people know you as a solutions guy, they're going to continually come to you every time they have a problem. They're going to be like, oh, I know Nick can fix this for me. I know Jimmy got the answer on this one. Hey, Jimmy, I'm having this kind of problem, right? And now you're like, I got you. And even if you don't got them right away, just always tell a realtor, yo, I got you. And then just go figure out the answer, right? Maybe you need to go watch a YouTube video or whatever thing. If you don't have somebody that's giving you the answer, like go figure it out, man. Be a figure outer, right? And it's the thing I love about military veterans is they are figure outers. They will not come to you with no dumb question. They will just figure it out, right? And and as loan officers, I think it's a skill that's missing today in the business is, are you a figure outer for realtors? Like you can't just be a loan officer. That's great that you're a loan officer, but what else, right? What else? Because there's 300,000 loan officers. I don't need you to do the loan. I can go do the loan with literally anybody. But what is it that you're providing me that's different or more, or whatever that's more attractive to me that makes me want to stay with you, right? What are you doing that's creating this golden handcuff that realtors can't leave or never want to leave, because they're not just losing you as their loan partner. They're losing like this long list of benefits that you provide within your company, right? I mean, we can get into some specifics, but like, man, virtual assistants are incredible for things that you can do with realtors. I mean, you'd be amazed at what one person making $600 a month can do. I mean, you might not realize what 40 hours really means, but so we have like an army of virtual assistants, right? And some of these kind of things that we can create so many value propositions to our agents that they'll never lose, because if they do, maybe they're losing their dialer, their lead dialer, they're losing to somebody, whoever's running their Facebook ads, they're losing, there's different pieces that you can kind of be bringing in on the back end. But I think the word value for the future, you have to figure out how to be valuable so that you don't end up having to work on one of those big teams. You can have the big team, and you can do that. Like, in 2 years, you can have a massive mortgage operation in 2 years. I mean, Casey and I, we have a huge goal to be at $100 million in production at Ticket by the end of this year. So by the end of 2022, $100 million in production a month. That's our goal. And, we're taking really, really big shots to try to get there. Right. And so you just got to, I think that the key for the future is how are you actually valuable, and not just that word is kind of gets thrown around as a cliche right now, but like how are you actually valuable to agents? And that value is what's going to attract new partners and maintain and strengthen the partners that you have now.
100%, brother. I loved all of that. I mean, to go back to the figure outer, I think that's what you were saying. It's like, you're either on team get it done or you're not. And like right. to use the brand, I mean, that's really what it is. Like it's either going to get done or it's not, but like, just figure it out. Like, come on. Like, I mean, use the team, put it all together. And man, I agree with you about all of this stuff. I mean, the future of teams is huge. I think Dave Savage was quoting that. I think there were like 300 teams or something prior to 2020, and there's like 3,000 teams now. I'm terrible at remembering the numbers. Please don't quote me on that. But it's like a massive amount more teams were formed during the refi booms. And I think that's only going to continue, because there's the brand head, there's the person that's going to get up on a podcast, there's the person that's going to get up in front of a stage full of people. but that's not the same person that's going to go chase down page 404 of the bank statement, or, you know, do the VOE, or fill out the application and dot all the I's, cross all the T's. That's a different person. And I would even say too, like you're talking about VAs, for $600 a month, you can get somebody to set up appointments for you. I mean, how much is it worth to you? You know, is it worth all day of calling? Brother, I love that. And we're so far ahead of ourselves, but I want to go back. Okay, we got way on a tangent, but that's okay. I loved it. Bring me back to, okay, you're in high school. I know I'm going way back.
Yeah, let's do it.
Look, you're moving around all the time. You didn't necessarily go really deep with friends back in the day. But what was, I guess, what was high school life? What did you focus on in school? Were you involved in any sports? What was your first job? What was your first car?
Yeah. High school was pretty interesting because I moved to Mountain View, California between my 8th and 9th grade. So when everybody's going from middle school to high school and they're all like super excited to get there with their friends, like I'm coming in with nobody, you know, because I didn't know anything. So I had met a few of the kids on base and stuff, and you know, the military brats all sort of clicked up just naturally. What's interesting, a lot of times people like gang up within or click up within their own grade, but for us, it was just like all the military kids just go to, you know, congregate together because we all sort of have each other's back. I mean, a lot of times military kids in a lot of ways can be kind of like a little strange or not have a culture, or, you know, because they're not just from, you know, some area where they grew up with like this kind of music and these kind of clothes and all this sort of influence. Like, you know, from even with my voice, right? Like people, if you hear me and my brother talk, people can't tell our voice apart a lot of times because we grew up in all the same places, but not in one place where, our voice just has a really unique like twang to it, or like, I don't know what you call it, but
an accent.
So yeah, it's the accent that we have is kind of interesting. So high school was cool. But I did graduate, went to school every day. You know, I was pretty good. I mean, coming up as my dad in the Navy, he was a master chief at the time. So it was like the highest level you can be as an enlisted guy in the Navy. And so I never wanted to do anything that would kind of like mess with him. But high school was an interesting place because right around the base was super poor. It was a sort of more Hispanic area. And like, it was just a really poor like community right outside of the base. And we rode a city bus to school. So they would come and pick us up on, in the military housing, go pick up this neighborhood right outside of base. And we always had like challenges amongst ourselves. And so, it was some of that. Then we also had a lot of really rich, kids in school because it's where Google was at, and there's a lot of like, at the time, it was like the Silicon boom was happening and stuff. This was, 1994 to 1998. And so, it's like AOL is big, all this kind of stuff, right? Like the whole and all those kids are in my high school too. So there's, in some cases, like, there's like some Mexican gangs, this kind of stuff with like the cholo kind of design, with the Dickies and stuff, like really high, richer kids, military brats. It was sort of a weird conglomerate of, people. So, but yeah, I mean, I made the best out of high school. I was also super involved with the Boy Scouts. So that really kept me pretty busy. I sort of did different leadership things within the Boy Scouts. There's like a sub-organization called the Order of the Arrow. And so I did a lot of stuff with Order of the Arrow. And so that's really where I did fine in school. I mean, I was pretty well on honor roll and things like that just to keep my dad happy. But really all my extra time, like I wasn't really into sports or after school activities and stuff. I pretty much like a couple nights a week at least and a couple weekends a month, I was out doing stuff with the Boy Scout, with the Boy Scouts and Order of the Arrow and things like that. And then, as I got ready to graduate, my dad basically told me he wasn't going to pay for college. So if I wanted to figure out how to go to college, I either need to like get a job or take out a loan or whatever. And like at that point, I just was pretty burned out of school just because my high school experience, it just wasn't the best. There was always seemed like challenges amongst the different groups, within the school. And I just didn't want to deal with any of that anymore. So he started recommending I go in the military, and he told me, suggested the Air Force and why he was suggesting the Air Force. And so that's how, I ended up making the plan as I was getting out of high school to join the Air Force.
That's really cool. I mean, yeah, hey, son, I'm not going to pay for college. And I mean, I would expect nothing less from a Master Chief, honestly. Like, listen, man, I'm kicking you out. Better figure this out. But I mean, that's tough love, though. I think that's just really, that's you can argue that it's like kind of mean, but you can also argue that it's like, listen, you're a man, like grow up, like it's time to do this. And
I think for my dad, he had like supported himself since he was 14 basically, and had his own job at that, all that kind of stuff. I mean, he did buy me my first car. He bought an Audi 5000S, had a turbo, had like a really sweet spot in the pedal. If you could find that spot, you could kick the turbo in and that sucker would move. It was actually a pretty decent lemon when we bought it. We bought it at night. The guy had excuses about everything, about he was selling it for his brother. And anyways, luckily my dad had some mechanically inclined friends and they fixed it up over a few weeks. But it was one of those things like, man, this seems too good to be true. And that's what we should have thought that, for sure when we were getting that car. But it was pretty interesting. And then, in Mountain View, there's a really famous amphitheater there called Shoreline Amphitheater. It's like a concert pavilion. It's one of those places that has those big grassy knoll thing. And you just put your blanket out there and chill and stuff. And people are usually smoking some pot and things out there. And that first job, it was the only place that would hire you at 14. So, when basically we all got hired there when I was a sausage slinger. So I worked in this spot, that would sell like the hot dogs and like all the fancy like tomato, basil sausage and stuff like that. Yeah, I was back there on the grill, messing up the sausages. It was cool because people would come by, the other workers, and they would tell you what they wanted to have for lunch, and you would like break one. Because if it was broken, you wouldn't serve it to the customer. You just keep it in the back. Somebody like, oh, what? I happen to have one of those here. That's perfect. But that summer, we all ended up getting fired because sometimes there was really good concerts, and you wouldn't want to just be listening to it at your sausage stand. So we would go to work like half a shift. And on our break, we would just take our shirt off and then go watch the concert, for the rest of the concert. And so, it only worked a few times. Then we ended up getting fired. So it was that was my first experience, at a job.
Smoking pot on the grassy knoll of the amphitheater, slanging sausages. I mean, that's just so funny, and I can honestly see you doing that. Like it's just like, I mean, that's hilarious. What? So okay, at 14 years old, you get fired from that place. Where'd you go after that?
I didn't get a job for like 6 months, and then my next job, I ended up getting a Hollywood Video. At the time, it was like the Blockbuster. Competitor. So,
yeah. Well, and look, you're mentioning Boy Scouts too. Like that's not as big nowadays. It just isn't. Like I think like back in the 90s and probably even early 2000s, it's kind of like it's a different organization nowadays. Yeah. But totally. Same with Hollywood Video too. I mean, were you, so I interviewed Phil Treadwell, and his like, one of his first jobs was that he was a manager, I think either Blockbuster or Hollywood Video, and he would get free movie tickets, and he would basically like, these are like free rental tickets, and basically like that was like the best currency that you could have because you could like trade them with people. Was it similar on your end, or what was it like working at Hollywood Video?
Yeah, they would let us rent like 2 movies at a time for free. So it was a pretty sweet deal. We didn't get the coupons. We just got some free rentals. So it was definitely a fun gig, especially because you could go out, you'd go out to the bin that was outside where people had dropped their movies off all night, and you'd have to go down and collect all the movies. And so you would get kind of first grabs at what was available. Sometimes people would be standing there waiting at the counter because they're waiting for some specific movie. And, odds are if you come right when they open on Sunday that somebody dropped it off last night or early in the morning or whatever. So it was a totally different time to try to find movies. That's for sure.
I mean, my God, now you just like, you go on Netflix or like one of your 5 other streaming services and click whatever the heck you want and watch it over and over again. That's, different time. Like you can't even relate to that if like you're a Gen Z, right? Like there's not even a chance. Okay. So bring us to the military. So your dad's like, look, I'm not going to pay for your college. You're like, look, I don't really want to go. I'm burnt out from school. You decide like, look, I'm going to join the Air Force. Was the Air Force like what you knew you wanted to do? Because here, your dad's in the Navy, Master Chief. I would almost assume that you'd want to go in the Navy. Why'd you pick the Air Force and why go into the military?
Yeah, my dad suggested the Air Force, and the way that he described it was, imagine there's a Navy base and there's an Air Force base, and there's a building on each base that needs to be rebuilt, like, or that's, kind of falling apart or whatever. And he said the Navy is going to fix the building. The Air Force is going to tear it down and build a new building. And I was like, okay, that's a pretty great description. And so based on that, I just went in the Air Force because that's what he suggested. I've always been like a little rotund, even it was true in high school. So like, when I went to try to get in the Air Force, I was weighing like 240. And so I ended up having to lose. I had my weight limit was 199. So from the first time that I talked to my recruiter and actually went in the Air Force was about 4 months or so, 3 or 4 months. And I basically, just went on like this crazy diet. I was exercising twice a day and, got down to 199. It was actually, they had this place called MEPS, which is like Military Enlistment Processing Center, something like that, right? And so it's where everybody goes when you're leaving to go to boot camp. And so I go to MEPS and I'm there for my, basically my physical and like signing up for the Air Force. And so I was exactly 199 at my recruiter's office when we went to go. And she told me, you can't eat until you weigh in. Like whenever you weigh in tomorrow or whatever, like you can't eat until then. So I didn't eat dinner. I didn't eat breakfast. It ended up being the afternoon, so I didn't eat lunch. I was like living off of a bag of Skittles, like having like one Skittle at a time, just so I could have some flavor in my mouth and stuff. And it's like feeling like I was starving. I had to go, because I had worked out 2 times and I couldn't eat. And I was exactly 199. And so it was perfect. Her advice was really good because otherwise I would have they would have, not let me in. I would have had to go and redo that whole process.
That's incredible. You would have thought you would have lost a pound. I mean,
right?
Like a pound at least.
Yeah. She's like, man, try to go to the bathroom. She's like telling me all these things, before you weigh in, like, because she didn't want me to be overweight. But it's just always like, I've just been lifelong struggle. But yeah, so that's why I ended up going in the Air Force, and I did pretty well on my, you take this ASVAB test and they give you all your options. But the only one that really sounded super interesting to me was like to be a cop basically on base. I always thought that'd be pretty cool, where it's like not quite as dangerous as like being a city cop because you're on base. It's a little more restrictive. But what I didn't realize was like in the Air Force, if you're a cop, which they call security forces, you're kind of like the Army of the Air Force. So you go everywhere first. You get like, if there's things that need to be done, they'll just call you to do that stuff. You're kind of like a gopher in some ways too. So, my time was like, started out guarding gates, for the bases or guarding airplanes. And then eventually you get to move up and you basically drove a cop car around all day and you'd be on call to do stuff, or you can move up and you can become a desk sergeant and be the dispatcher basically. So it was cool. But the first base I was at Laughlin Air Force Base in Texas, it was great as a security forces because it was a super small pilot training base. And there's just really a few cops there. So you got to move up really fast. And so within the first couple of years, you can experience all the different positions that if you were at a bigger base might take you 4, 5, 6 years, before you could become like a flight sergeant, be in charge for the day or whatever. Whereas at that base, maybe you can do that within a couple of years. So it was a great, first base to be at for sure. But yeah, it was interesting because at MEPS, they were like, oh, did you hear about the bonus? And I was like, oh, what bonus? And he's like, yeah, if you just sign up for 2 more years, we'll give you like $6,000. And I was like, for me, I had worked at Walmart before I went in the military, and I was like, $6,000, man. Okay, I'm in for that, right? So I signed this paper, and I ended up signing up for 6 years instead of 4 years. And turns out they tax that at like 30-something%, so you only end up with like $4,800. So when you break it down, basically they gave me like $100 a month extra for, to sign my life away for 2 more years. It was a terrible, terrible deal. But I called my dad from like, basic training. I was like, oh yeah, by the way, they gave me this bonus for 2 more years. And he's like, oh, you're an idiot, And it was just funny, man. Like when I think about it nowadays, obviously I'm in a like slightly different, I'll say much different position now. And, at the time, like $6,000, man, I was like, felt like they were giving me the world, offering me $6,000. It was crazy.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I guess here I'm reminded of the quote: "A sucker's born every day." I mean, I wonder how many people do they roll that out to that eventually just sign it, because of.
Dude, I've got a bunch, man, because it's rich kids don't go in the military is basically the phrase, right? I mean, if you look at where they recruit, it's like rural, poor areas and already military kids and stuff. And I mean, so yeah, to offer, some farmer kid $6,000, they're like, what? Right. Just immediately take the money, just like I did. Brother, and then I spent it all on a sound system for my pickup truck. So it was like worked out pretty well.
That is so perfect. I love that. Bring us to Iraq. I mean, my goodness, this is like here. So you're at Laughlin Air Force Base in Texas. I have to imagine it's fairly cozy in a lot of ways. I guess how did how did you become aware that you're going to Iraq? How did like that process happen? And then what happened when you got there?
Yeah. So when September 11th happened, we had just gotten back from a tour. I was in Saudi Arabia for 3 months from like June to August in 2001. In the Air Force, when you come back again, because they take care of their people really well, when you come back from a 90-day deployment, you get 14 days off to chill out. And so we were on our 14 days off when September 11th happened. So I actually didn't have, I didn't have my cable hooked back up or any of that stuff yet. And so my mom called and, so it's pretty interesting. We basically ended up going to work. Like we immediately went on 12-hour shifts. It was like this big, lockdown and security level, whatever they called it now. I don't remember at this point. And so actually Laughlin Air Force Base, where we were, was the very first Air Force base to deploy people to get ready for like the invasion into Afghanistan. They went to this little island called Diego Garcia. A lot of people never heard of it. It's in the Indian Ocean. It's actually owned by It's a British colony or British island. And they basically got there. They secured the island and the airfield, and then planes started landing there. And that's where they launched the initial invasion from Afghanistan, was off of that island.
Wow. So
it was like a few months after that is when we ended up, going, maybe it was like the first time that I went to Iraq, people from that base kept going. We ended up moving to a new base called Goldsboro, like Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. That was in North Carolina. And basically right when we got there is when we got deployed the first time. So we went, in 2003, and then going again in 2004. And then, I got out of the Air Force in 2005 just because I didn't want to go back again. But really, the interesting thing about Iraq, I mean, my job wasn't as dangerous as like some people's jobs. They're like going outside of the wire every day and this kind of stuff.
Right.
When we got there, I had been trained to, the Air Force bought these little styrofoam planes that had 3 cameras, and you would launch them with this giant rubber band. It was pretty cool. And it was like a, remote control toy airplane with some cameras, and it would record. And so I got trained on that system. And that's what we were doing at first. We would fly this camera outside the base. It would do a trail basically of where the people were going to go later that day. And then we would videotape it. They would go watch the camera. They could watch the videotape and see if anything had changed. Maybe there's this new giant trash pile that wasn't there before that could be an IED or this type of stuff. And then basically they said they didn't need us to do that anymore. And so we got moved up north to a new base called Balad Air Base. And, at that base, they didn't like us as much there. So we were getting attacked every day with mortars and rockets and, stuff like that. Aside from the attacks, Iraq was pretty fun because I got to admit, there's a ton of camaraderie going on in the war zone, right? And just like, people are cutting up. I mean, you're trying to like find the fun and the not fun. They feed you really well when you're there, like steak and lobster every Friday and stuff like that. I mean, so it's, there was some fun parts about it, but it's pretty interesting, being there when you're getting attacked every day and kind of like facing life or death, type of in the face. And, for some people, they like went crazy, I mean, you would see it where some people would be like, oh, you got to get me out of here, and then, but at some point you just sort of come to grips. Like, I mean, you just can't control everything,
So I mean, what a prep for the mortgage industry, truthfully, and real estate in general. I mean, because people literally will act like that, like, "Hey, man, you got to get me out of here," but like, it's not really life or death, in our industries, and it never is. I mean, somebody misses a closing date, but you think that it's literally like they're losing their life. But if you go back to those days, I guess, the cop on the base, that type of position. What did anything like crazy happen? Like, I guess, like here, you're in Iraq, you're getting attacked every day. I have to imagine you've seen death. I've had to imagine that like it was around you. Any like particular stories that maybe you've never shared before, or maybe just like details that, I guess to make somebody feel like what it was actually like to be there.
Yeah. I remember one time there was a little bit of where we lived in the Air Force tent city. The Air Force, let's just say on average, they're like softer than the Marines or than the Army, right? I mean, the Air Force people didn't carry around guns, even in Iraq, which I thought was amazing that we're like in a war zone, actively getting bombed every day, and like not every airman carried a weapon. They just didn't do that. So if you started seeing more weapons in Tent City, you would know like things were getting a little bit more heated, and so there was a little bit of where we were part of this thing called a quick response force, QRF. And so we had to keep our guns with us, like in our tents and this kind of stuff. And they started just kind of picking up the bombings a little bit. It was one of the times that was the scariest to me was we were on shift and we were working. And so we got trained because they were shooting rockets at us every day. We got trained on what they call a back azimuth, which is, if a rocket lands, whether it blows up or doesn't blow up, you can look at where it lands, what size hole it makes, the angle of the explosion, and some different things. And you can kind of determine where it came from. Okay, it probably came from this direction. Since that's a 108 millimeter round, it usually goes this far. It probably came from this distance. And you can kind of guess. So we were the crazy guys that had to go like to the attack whenever the attacks were happening. And then the Army had a counter battery and they would like shoot stuff back at whoever was shooting at us, which, unfortunately, a lot of times was just some innocent farmer that had been paid $1,000 and, which was a ton of money to an Iraqi farmer, like literally months worth of money. And the bad guys, let's call them, they would pay the farmers like, hey, build this berm. Here's how you do this. Launch these 4 rockets. We'll pay you $1,000. And so by the time we're shooting back, usually it's like the farmer and his family that's getting killed, not whoever should have been taking responsibility for it. But one time they shot the rocket and it landed in Air Force Tent City, and it actually on landing, it didn't blow up. So we got called out. We come over there. We were pretty close, just a couple minutes away. And when we get there, the thing was still smoking, and it's like literally where people are sleeping right around us. And man, it was like one of those things where you don't want to run in because like the thing could blow up. It's still literally smoking. I don't want to run in here and try to like, I got to save myself also, and so it's kind of this weird moment of what do you do here, but we ended up starting to clear out all the tents and it ended up never exploding. It just sat there and it smoked for a couple of minutes, and man, it was scary as hell though, because, it just felt like at any second that thing could go off. But a lot of those munitions were left over from the original Iraq war or from the Russia-Afghanistan war and some of those things. So, they were shooting duds at least 20% of the time or something. Probably they were hitting, they were shooting duds.
But I mean, you of course don't know that. You of course don't know that. And like, I guess, how'd you get it out? I'm sure there's a bomb squad of sorts where like they call it
EOD, like explosive ordnance disposal. So we basically cleared out, for each round, depending on what size it is, you would kind of know like, okay, most likely if this thing explodes, it's going to kill like whoever's like in 15 feet of this thing is going to die. And so, you'd clear out whatever the space that we needed to clear out. So we just woke everybody up, got them out of the tents. I mean, the tents were all fairly protected. They had like these sandbag walls built up around them. And just for this exact reason. So if one comes and it hits the ground, there's at least sandbags up like 3 or 4 or 5 feet high where people are sleeping. The idea is that at least, they don't die. Worst case scenario, they get a little shrapnel or whatever. But, so yeah, it ended up, we just called EOD. They came out and took it out, and they had a place on, like out in the sticks on the base where they would go and destroy all that stuff. That was always pretty fun to watch because, they would stockpile it there for a few days or a few weeks before they would blow it up. So it was always like a pretty awesome explosion. But yeah, that was by far one of the like crazier moments. And obviously there's times where they did explode and people really got hurt or got killed and stuff, but oftentimes it was just like luck of the draw with those rockets and stuff. They had no real aiming to them. They were just putting them on the side of a dirt berm and hoping for the best, and I mean, sometimes they got lucky and a lot of times they didn't.
Wow. I mean, but you're on the other side of the luckiness or not, I mean, I can absolutely see why somebody would go crazy and be like, you got to get me out of here. I mean, the anxiety, I'm sure that someone must think. You almost have to be just like completely out of it and like just not even paying attention to the reality to be able to survive the mental trauma of that. I mean, like I get it. And then you come back to United States, to live a normal life. And I mean, how can you even be normal? How can you? I mean, there's just I
remember the first, when we got back from Iraq, I remember the very first time I went to Walmart. I think we'd been back maybe like 3 or 4 days. And we go to Walmart, close the door, and we started walking in, and like I heard a really loud boom, and man, I dropped down to my knee, and it was just somebody like slamming their car door or whatever. But I was just so used to, like those kind of booms being, like bombs going off or whatever. It's like the Outkast song, bombs over Baghdad, and so I was like, oh man, I'm at Walmart, I don't have to do that anymore. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's still, yeah, it took a little bit to get over. I mean, especially like I said, I can understand how some people that have had far worse experiences than I did. A lot of, man, there's like, I've got a friend here that lives in my town that was like, I just call him a door kicker, right? That dude was like literally carrying basically a pump shotgun, kicking doors in, like blasting whoever was on the other side. And, he dealt with stuff that I never had to deal with. And I mean, it's so I feel like lucky in that sense that, I mean, in general, I had a pretty calm experience. I was running a little store over there selling DVDs, like fake watches and stuff I was getting from the Iraqis. And, yeah, it was pretty fun. Some of the stuff that like I said, other than getting bombed at every day, it was like made the best of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that doesn't surprise me knowing you now that you were selling some fake watches in the in the place getting stuff from Iraqis. That's hilarious. Like, how do you even get that connection? But that's Nick Carpenter. We're gonna be making some friends, and let's sell some stuff.
Sure.
All right, so bring us to, you come back home. You're at Walmart. You're kind of freaking out with some stuff, but eventually, like, look, that's 2004, and you've already mentioned, like, look, you were a real estate agent in 2005. Why? How did you get into real estate? And really bring us to how you got into the lending side of things.
Yeah. I bought my first house when I moved to Goldsboro, North Carolina, to the base at Seymour Johnson. It was actually, we ended up finding a builder. We built the house and that whole process. And so when I decided to get out of the Air Force, I was like, man, I really enjoyed that whole real estate thing. So I decided to get my real estate license. I already knew I was going to be moving back to Texas because that's where my parents and my brother were. And I mean, the truth is I just didn't know what else to do. So, I mean, I just went back to Texas. So I started my real estate license online, got my whole classes done, basically, hooked up with a broker. In Texas, there's a big, independent company called Ebby Halliday. So I worked at Ebby Halliday, and it was awesome. I was rookie of the year in 2005 or 2006. And, not even that. I mean, I closed like okay money, okay loan, deals, but man, I just was really figuring out marketing. I had already done some marketing things when I was in the Air Force. I had created my first website, and I was selling shoes that had like fake Gucci and Louis Vuitton print and stuff on them. I was getting them I found like a Chinese supplier, so people would buy stuff on my site. I'd go home and they would send me PayPal, and at night I would order the shoes from the guy in China, and he would drop ship them to the clients, and it was working out really well, So I had already dabbled in marketing, and that's what really intrigued me the most. And so I was using magazine ads with a 1-800 line that I would get all the leads when they would push the numbers in and all that kind of stuff back in the day, just trying to figure it out. But I really disliked working with buyers, which in real estate is a problem because it's how you get paid often is working with people, but I would take a buyer out for the weekend. I'd show them houses, buy them lunch and stuff. And then they wouldn't buy a house and I'd just be mad. And I would just never talk to them again. Right. And I'm like, what? You want to go look at houses again? Man, we just did that for a whole weekend. What are you talking about, man? And, so it didn't work out super great in that sense. So what I started doing was referring all the business out and just taking the 30% referral fee.
No way.
So that was working out really good.
That's brilliant.
I mean, and so I was making decent money doing that. And then I ended up basically finding an opportunity to go work at Keller Williams in Southlake, Texas. At the time, it was the number 3 or 4 office in the country. And I was on staff, basically onboarding new agents. I was teaching some of the classes for the, Keller Williams had a thing, and they still do, called 443. And so I was teaching 443 classes and organizing other outside experts to come in and teach. And, I don't know, I was just kind of starting to find my groove sort of what I was really good at. And so some people ended up leaving from Keller. Keller Williams has an agent leadership council, and, where every office has one, and it's the top agents in the office, and they really make the decisions for the office. And well, there's kind of a coup, and 3 or 4 of those agents, they all left and created a new company. And so I heard about this in the hallways, and I was like, oh, I'm definitely coming with y'all. And so that's what I did, right? I left with them. It was called Synergy Realty. And I just ran that office for a couple years. And we had an in-house lender, which was Benchmark Mortgage. And so one day the lady there, she told me about this opportunity that there was this company in Dallas. They needed to make a mortgage team or marketing department. And so I interviewed with them, and I ended up going to work for Benchmark in 2011. And,
Wow.
at Benchmark is, I was working there with Stuart Hunter and Jim McMahon, still love those guys. And like, I was, figuring it all out. Like, I had never done mortgage marketing before. I had done real estate marketing. And so it was awesome to figure, it was like 6 months or so of me just trying to figure out, like, how do we turn this into value and, different stuff, right? I mean, I think what a lot of loan officers are trying to figure out for themselves. And I just, through experimentation with 50 branches, I was able to try stuff. I can be like, yo, Jimmy, let me get $500 a month to go test these Facebook ads, right? So I was testing Facebook ads in 2012, like before most people, 10 years before now, right? It's like crazy that I've been running ads for 10 years. And, teaching classes and like these different things, and I was able to perfect it with other people's money basically. And which was great, right? Like they made money. They would, I didn't have to go to the corporate office and be like, hey, I need this $5,000 a month to test marketing stuff. And they're like, heck no, right? I could just go to like 5 loan officers and say, hey, John, I need, can you give me like $500 or $1,000 a month and I can test these ads and let's see how they perform. And, it's crazy how, to think back on it right now. But,
so I mean, it's really Gary Vee wine library type stuff. I mean, like really though, totally. It's just like, it's at that time, nobody was in it. And sure. I mean, even in 2015, 2016, still not a lot of people were in it. And like, I mean, good luck figuring out Facebook Ads Manager, for instance, if you're just starting out. And even now it's tough, but
I remember getting leads for a quarter. Like there's still, I don't want to give away, there's still one market and one ad we can run and get leads for like 15 cents, which is, ridiculous. But in general, like nowadays, leads are costing, $1, couple dollars, $5 for super high quality leads, that kind of thing. But man, especially in the early days, like 2014, 2015, which I kind of think TikTok might be like where Facebook was like 2015, 2016, I think is where TikTok is today. I think it's for sure not going anywhere. It's only going to continue to grow. And, we're doing some testing and kind of, doing some stuff on TikTok right now. Not necessarily me, like I'm a terrible TikToker, but I'm testing it on the back end with like ads and, some different things. But yeah, I mean, so like in 2014, I ran an event in Breckenridge, Colorado, and it was basically for up and comers. And I actually got in trouble for running the event. I figured out a way to do it as a net zero cost to the company, where the people coming to the event paid whatever we needed to make in order for it to be a net cost of zero to the company. But what I did was I basically figured it all out, promoted the event, sold it out and everything before I told them we were doing it. And they were like, hey, how about you don't do that anymore? Right. And so at that point,
especially a mortgage company. Yeah. I mean, it's so regulated for sure.
Right. So they're like, maybe you should like tell us next time before you like plan an event with 15 of our people, And I was like, okay, yeah. So maybe that was kind of like the beginning of the end for me to leave. But Jim McMahon gave a quote that I still live my life by today. And he said, there's enough people who will do business your way that you don't need the ones who won't. Right. There's enough people who do business your way. You don't need the ones who won't. And
I've heard you say that before, and I've written it down actually. And it's just so true, because I want to just double down on this for a second. Just stay there. Is that I think that as loan officers, we all the time, we almost bend non-negotiables to try to get those 40, to try to get all those people. And the truth is that, man, if you just have 2 great business partners, 2 great agents, 3, 4 great agents, that's better than 40 ones or twosies a quarter, and like to go really deep with those people, they become your best friends, and it's not work. Mm-hmm. And I think that you have to literally, I think it's tough to appreciate that right away, because you want to, I want to make $1 zillion and, or not $1 zillion, $1 million, and I want to get all these people. And, but you're right, man. I think that there, especially today, that can't be more true, is that there's plenty of people that will work with you the exact way that you want to work them. And you don't have to chase everybody. Chase the people that that you like, and then go deep with them.
Yeah. What's interesting, you bring up like 2 people, is if you watch the Relo LO show, as these episodes come out, you're gonna
I'm a huge fan, by the way. I love it. Yeah,
Thank you.
for sure.
Especially like after episode 6, there's like a breakdown episode, which is basically like bonus episode 7, and Casey's gonna go through all the numbers and like show you where the loans actually come from. And not to be too much of a spoiler, but it literally all comes from 2 people, right? And but not necessarily that those 2 people gave us all the loans. It's like, oh, this lady introduced us to this lady, and she did 2 deals with us, and she introduced us to her friend, and she did this, and like it. But when you actually trace it all back, and people are going to be, that's the thing. Like that was one of the most shocking things for me doing the show with Casey was that the fact that I assumed we needed to go out and get like 8 or 10 partners to hit these goals that we had, and we did not. We just needed to know who we were going after and help those people. And then those people will introduce us to their friends that are exactly like them.
Right.
And it was like mind boggling at how well it worked with so few people.
And Casey's just a great worker though, at the end of the day though, just like kind of what you were saying in the beginning of this was that like, look, there's certain things that are understood. You got to close on time. You have to actually make it work. And Casey's that worker. I mean, he's going to make it happen. He's going to get it done. But he's also going to call, a bunch of people. I love the teaser episode where he's just like, hey man, there's 2 people in that room and it holds 60 and like, or whatever it was. And like, lucky Nick's here to help me like suck up my pride and just like, get the ego kick, like that.
Yeah. It was crazy because there was more people on the camera crew than there were like at the class. If you would have seen like behind the scenes, because there was like 4 camera guys there, at least 4 camera guys were there. And yeah, I think it was 3 guys running cameras and Rob, who was like running the whole thing behind the scenes, Rob Espita, awesome guy. And yeah, it was nuts. Right. And then only 3 people actually ended up showing up. That was it was pretty wild. And we had already shrunk the room down from 60 to like 20 because we were thinking we were going to get like 15 or 20 people that were going to be there. So it was a mess.
I mean, but I think that's so great that you guys actually showed all of that, because I think that that's really what it's all about, and then making the best out of it. And then Casey even told me, he's like, look, it's because of that event that we were able to go to the next one. And he's told me too that you've had events where you've tried to, you thought 60 people were going to come, but only 1 person showed up. But that 1 person introduced you to the mayor of 2 different towns. And what's that value worth? And that's the biggest thing. Me and Kyle Draper talk about this a lot. Actually, this is his quote. He said, would you rather have 10,000 followers or 1? And of course, it's a trick question. Who wants 10? Of course, you want 10,000. But what if the 1 is Oprah or Pitbull or Gary Vee? Of course you want the 1. And that's the thing that I think a lot of us we all want the vanity metrics. We want views, we want likes, we want comments. That doesn't get you closed loans. That doesn't get you a good relationship. And I think that that's just really important to point out. All right. I want to be super respectful of your time, brother. And I love all of this. This is just, I feel like I've gotten to know you on a much deeper level. And I'm really glad that we got this whole story. But before I go to, I have 4 questions I ask everybody. But before I go to that, I want to talk about just for a minute, the Legion of Loan Officers, the Cabal, and you have a 6-week LO challenge. I know that you have going out, and I want to just talk about that briefly. Why should somebody join the Legion? How is it different than any other coaching program out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. The Legion is different because there's a ton of places today where you can swipe a credit card, you can buy access to something, you can have somebody coach you and yell in your ear about what you need to be doing. But oftentimes there's not a very simple implementable system that's like, just easy bites to take off. Like, okay, just do this today, do this the next day, do this the next day. And eventually, we build up to this specific result. So the Legion is really the best right now, I think, in the market at attracting realtor partners without relying on any kind of cold calls, through positioning, authority building, actual creating value in the marketplace. Look, we proved it with the Relo LO show, right? Check out the episodes. And you can see, like, we started with 3 people at our first event. Remember that whenever you watch episode 6 and you see what like month 3 is like, because you're gonna be like, damn, these like let's just call it exponential growth. Okay, exponential growth. And if we would have stayed there long term, we're talking about having a top 1% business that we built, in 90 days. I mean, like, and all of that was just based on following the Legion system, right? We made a few tweaks, but 95% of what we did in Colorado Springs was just following the Legion system, running live events that are actually valuable to agents, helping them get results right away so that they're intrigued enough to be like, yo, Jimmy, man, this class was amazing. Like, what else can you do for me? You're like, oh, let's meet up one-on-one, man, and we'll make a plan together. And then I'll show you how to run that one-on-one meeting, get them to commit their business to you. And I know the numbers that in the Legion, 15% of realtors that show up at one of your live events are going to do a deal with you in the first 30 days. I know the numbers. So I can tell you, like, it's easy to extrapolate what are your goals and how do we get there? You know, how many people do you need to show up at your events based on that conversion number and what your goals are to do business and, you know, some of that. So we're also showing, you know, how to run ads and, you know, how to do database marketing. Like, it's, you know, we're focusing on 3 or 4 different pillars, but by far and away, the thing that's going to bring value and the fastest growth to your business is doing live monthly events. And that's what, you know, hugely we're focused on the Legion with a background of running Facebook ads so you don't have to rely on agencies. I'm going to show you, like, look, we have an agency. It's called the Adsmiths. My brother runs our agency today. We're generating hundreds of leads a month. We have an entire call team in Mexico and South Africa. And, you know, everything we're doing on there, I just teach it to you in Legion. So you can pay us $5,000 a month and we'll just do it for you, or you can pay significantly less than that and just learn how to do it yourself, which I think is better because now you have the skills, the knowledge, you feel more confident and more powerful. Realtors can't say nothing to you when you can open your Facebook Ads Manager and show them your results, right? You can just shut them down immediately. And that's powerful when you can do that. So that's what we're focused on in Legion. Mortgage Cabal, I asked myself the Gary Keller question. What's the number one thing we could do that would, by solving it, would solve or make every other problem less of an issue or go away? And it's running the live events for people. So in the Legion, we show you how to run live events. You can do it. In the Cabal, we just do it for you. So we run a once-a-month class. We run a once-a-month workshop. We help you run a secret Facebook group where you get all your realtors inside. We're building relationships inside of the group. Quarterly live events with the Cabal. So we're going to Louisville, Kentucky in March. We're going to Punta Cana. We're going to New Jersey in September. We were just in Palm Beach in December, or West Palm Beach, back in December. So it's about, you know, us. My team is doing a lot more. We have an entire VA army that is accessible for graphics, video editing. We're doing all the promotions and background stuff, getting you more realtor relationships through private messages, through group interactions. Like, all that's happening for you with virtual assistants tapped into your Facebook, which I think is an incredible strategy that most people aren't tied into today. Half of what goes on my Facebook is Filipinos virtual assistants. You know, I just write the message one time and say, like, hey, can you send this message out to like all these people? And they just do that. And I jump in later. And there's all these things that are really valuable there. So that's what the Cabal is about, is like us doing a lot more, but then also having quarterly meetups where you have accountability and friendships with like people operating at a really high level. You know, most people in the Cabal are making at least $1 million. You know, and it's just a higher level group. We have like 20 something people in that group today. The 6-week LO challenge is, you know, selfishly, it's going to be my, you know, path to recruiting people into taking mortgage, because they're going to go through the 6-week challenge. They're going to experience what it's like being around me and around Casey, and they're going to want more of that. It's like some percentage of people are going to want more. This is our first time doing it right now. So I don't know the numbers yet, but once I know the numbers, then it'll be easy for me to say, like, okay, we want to recruit 5 people a month. So that means we need to get 72 people to join the challenge every month or whatever. Right. And it's like, we'll just figure out, you know, that's the great thing I love about the mortgage business. Most of it is just math.
Right.
So 6-week challenge is great. $97. It's like lochallenge.com, $97. We start on the first Tuesday of every month. And we're going to run you through a process of hosting a live event, following up with agents in one-on-ones, and converting them into partners, with the goal to create 6 partners and, you know, or 3 partners, 6 deals, you know, see that coming to life in the first 6 weeks that we're together. And I think that's super doable. So yeah, that's like kind of the things I've got going on right now.
Brother, I love all of that. And I love how I just asked you 3 things and you just went with all of it. That's like literally that answers, I think, anybody's question. The only thing I would want to ask or add to it is that, look, you've been kind of low key about any ownership in Ticket Mortgage. I guess, is there a reason why you've been kind of low key about it, and why come out with it now?
Yeah. Casey and I, we only actually partnered up around 6 months ago. So like toward the summer to fall of 2021, we decided to make the partnership. He's not the first person that approached me to do a partnership. He's just the guy that made the most sense to me. I mean, Casey's a freaking workhorse. You mentioned it earlier. Like nobody's going to outwork him. He'll die before he lets you outwork him,
100%.
which is amazing. I watched what he was able to do with my stuff in 1 year to build it to 100 million. So I know for sure we can go hit 100 million in a month, with our goal that we have right now. If anything, the reason I've been low key is, I don't want anybody to just to think like I'm only trying to recruit for ticket, right? Maybe it takes away from the Legion or takes away from Cabal or any of these things. I think to me, they're all interconnected. If I got to be perfectly honest, I make a ton more money off of people at ticket than I do in the Legion. So, in the end of the day, like if there is any negative consequence, like I'm perfectly okay with that. But yeah, basically we've just been trying to figure out our plan, like what's our unique value proposition. We kind of knew what it was, but now we like have it really dialed in on exactly how we can take somebody that's already doing, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 deals, whatever that is, and kind of maybe add 50% or 100%, to that pretty quickly, without necessarily making anybody more productive. Because I don't think you can do that, right? I don't think you can make somebody more productive. Like they're going to work as hard as they work stuff. I'm just trying to show people like, hey, maybe instead of like those Monday calls, what if you did this instead with that same amount of time? Maybe we get better results out of those 5 hours,
right.
And just take what they're doing. So that's, if anything, that's why I've been kind of low key about it. I'm not exactly sure how to recruit, if I say it in that way, like sometimes I think about doing different things, making posts and stuff. I'm like, I'm just trying to figure out how do you even do that, right? Because I don't want to just go recruit like any random people. I want to recruit like winners that already know me and like me, and
Right.
So it's been interesting on like how to go about putting that out there in a way where it doesn't negatively affect any relationships I have or anything now, but people know like that I'm really serious about it as well. Cause like we're dead serious about hitting that 100 million by the end of this year, 100 million a month.
Well, and here to go back to what you're saying too, I'm not really sure how to recruit. A good friend of mine, Roland Cochran. I think you know who Roland is.
For sure.
He started to actually train and like coach recruiters, and I quote him regularly. I love that guy. Me and him are bros. He says that if you roll out the red carpet to somebody, to a loan officer, and then they start at your company, and then you rip the red carpet out from underneath them, you shouldn't be recruited. You should not roll out the red carpet to somebody and then it's a fake thing. So the first thing you have to ask yourself is look, am I actually offering something that exists? And then like, is it really what I'm saying it is once people actually start? Because a good way to just destroy your reputation is to roll out the red carpet and then rip it out. But here's the thing though, Nick, every mortgage company does this. I would argue 90% of them. Every is an exaggeration, but 90, at least 75, like at least 75. That's not an exaggeration, where it's just like, yeah, come and work for us, and they'll hire anybody and tell them anything. Pay a 3-month, bonus, and then, all right, well, we got you in. Now it's really difficult for you to move, and it's painful as a loan officer to come to a place and then leave right away. You don't want to do that. You want to give somebody at least a year. You don't want to have your business partners be disrupted. There's all that stuff. So I guess I know you're just figuring this out, but I would venture to guess that that's what you're trying to avoid.
For sure. Yeah. And I definitely don't think like those things will happen with us. I like to think that whatever I tell people is going to happen is what we end up doing, and the value propositions that we're bringing to the table are all real and actually valuable. But yeah, it's been interesting because, people have known me in the industry for a long time, but I've never had my own company. So it's just, I'm just trying to figure out like how to wade those waters, of talking about the Legion and having people, still want to come to Legion and do stuff with me there. And, but like, how do I, because like I've got some obviously really amazing friends that I would love to work at Ticket. I'm just like trying to figure out how to approach those conversations. Like some people told me the other day, a guy, I was at an event with Grant Wise, and he said, just send a message and tell him like, hey, listen, man, I'm sure like you're super, super happy where you're at. But if that's ever not the case, I'd love to be the first person you have a conversation with about it, And I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that,
So a top producer or somebody that's been around a long time, I don't think that would be a bad reach out. And especially because, you get I have like 10 recruiters sending me something to that effect, or a text message or whatever. But what's their value? They're just a recruiter. I think that you bring a different value, and it's just a different talk, truly.
Yeah.
All right. So there's 4 questions I ask everybody. I want to make sure that I get these out. So,
all right.
First one is this. Do you feel like you ever got a big break?
My big breaks have always come from attending live events and taking one random idea that I heard, typically not from somebody on stage, but from a side conversation, and actually implementing that into my business. I'll give you a perfect example. First is one that I don't really ever talk about too much, but back in the day, like let's say around 2013-ish, 2012, I was doing some stuff behind the scenes with Ryan Stewman and, helping him when he was basically building out Break Free Academy. And at the time I was sort of like a marketing whore. And he really turned me on to the idea of high ticket. Like I was selling websites like $800, and he's like, dude, just tell them it's like 2,500 or something. I was like, well, 2,500, that's crazy, And he's like, they're going to say yes or no, like just tell them. And so like I did, and it worked. And, so I would credit him for like sort of my first high ticket. The next one is, I was at an event in Puerto Rico, and I was listening to Bobby Stocks talk. And he was basically telling me, like, he was telling another guy, oh man, we're spending like $800 a day on Facebook ads. And I was like, oh my God, $800 a day. Like I'm spending like, 50 or 80 or something like that at the time, I think 100 maybe. And I was like, $800 a day. Like I'm doing the math on that, like, man, that's crazy. That's like $20,000 a month. But I'm hearing his numbers, and I'm looking at my numbers, and he's like, look, if, I just know the numbers. Like I know that if we spend 800, we get this many leads, we get this many conversions, it's this much revenue. So I just said, well, like, okay, well, if that's true for him, it's gotta be true for me too. So I just tripled my ad spend immediately. Like, all right, let's just go from like 100 to 300 or whatever. And the revenue basically did the same thing. It just doubled or tripled the same way, right? And sometimes it's like our own mental breaks or blocks that are holding us back. And so going to live events, listening to the side conversations, and actually implementing something that like somebody that's ahead of me was doing, that's been my biggest breakthroughs.
Wow, I love that. Me too. That's awesome. All right. If you were to do it all over again, Nick, what would you change?
Oh man, that's a great question. I would definitely find mentors faster. I think especially early on, and even still today, it's always a challenge of feeling like you know it all already, or you're already doing great, or this and that. But there's levels to everything. There's always levels, and finding mentors that are ahead of you, that are willing to hold you accountable, and especially like I get the most value out of like masterminds and kind of group situations. I mean, I think there's definitely value in one-on-one coaching or one-on-one mentorship. But being around other people that are winning, that are productive, especially if you get around people that are ahead of you in life, whatever that means to you, I think all of that is like super motivational. And especially if I can get around people that are in other industries, and like the whole idea, like steal like an artist, right? If this guy's doing something amazing for dentists, and I'm like, whoop, I can yank that over here and I can pull that into my group or what I'm doing in my industry. That's been very beneficial. So I would for sure try to get around mentors or people that I would invest in my own success earlier and more often than I did, especially like, man, especially the first like 10 years, of trying to be an entrepreneur and stuff. I really didn't do that hardly at all. And that was probably, my biggest roadblock, was just trying to figure it all out on my own.
I love that. Me too. I think a lot of people. That's awesome. Was there ever a time, Nick, you felt like giving up?
Oh yeah. I mean, the last year, has been insane for me. I mean, I lost my 16-year-old in March 2021. And so the last, almost a year now has been like, he died on March 23rd. And it's been like, definitely, especially in the past year, multiple times I could have easily just like blown my business up and go and move to Thailand or some shit, like 100%. I could have done that multiple times. I haven't, because I have big goals, and I have like, things that I need to accomplish is the only reason I haven't already done that. But like my goal for this year, for 2022, is to get a lot more passive investments. I've already been doing a great job of that this year so far, for the simple reason that, like, if I want to run away, I want to feel like I can. And right now I probably couldn't, because I make my money basically being like sort of a public figure between the Legion and Cabal and different things. So I don't have like, and not that I want to run away. I mean, I don't want people to misunderstand what I'm saying, but like, but sometimes it's good, like, you can know that you could, right? And that's where I'm at right now, especially since I lost my son. Just like, I don't know, man, sometimes like grief is a weird thing, it kind of ebbs and flows and comes and goes, but it's always there. And, it's always like right below the surface. And sometimes it comes through in negative ways and things. And, yeah, so for sure, man, especially this past year has been pretty difficult. And I could have definitely hopped on a jet plane to Thailand or somewhere and just like literally never hear from me again, and not that I would go like die, but I would just like live just fall off the face of the marketing mortgage earth.
I totally get it. I have to ask this, as someone that's struggled with grief before, what stage was the hardest for you?
The hardest stage for me was when people basically all like went back to their regular lives, but I'm still dealing with it. You know what I mean? Because at some point we have really short attention spans. So people like really cared that happened for like 2 weeks. And then, people are like back on their regular life, and it's kind of weird. I mean, but as a general statement, like nobody brings it up. And, so that piece where it still affects me every single day. And, like, especially on my wife, it affects her like even more, than me. And, yeah, so I think that's the hardest part, is like that. It's still, for me, it still is like feels super fresh, but for most people, they're just like back living their lives, and it's not, it's more of like an afterthought or something that happened last year to them. But for me, it's like every day I'm dealing with it.
Right. Life sort of pauses for you, but everybody else really moves on. And I mean, they have to, you get it, but it's just
right.
like at the same time, that's your reality. All right. Last question to set it up. There's a young Nick out there, and, maybe they're growing up on military bases. Maybe they're, moving every 2 years. Maybe their dad is in the military, and they're a chief. They're they're basically living under the rule of somebody in the military every day. Maybe they're searching for something that they want to belong to that's bigger. Maybe they feel like they're alone. Maybe they're driving their Audi 5000S, and they're not really hitting it at the level that they need to be. Maybe they're just getting into the military. Maybe they're just starting out in mortgage, and they're calling 40 realtors every Monday. What advice would you give to someone looking to get it done?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, some people need external motivation. Some people are internally motivated. And I think you have to figure out what that is for you, whether you like to go towards pleasure or away from pain. I think there's ways that you can establish both of those things in your life. Maybe you write a $500 check to a charity that you hate, to the opposite political party. And if you don't accomplish such and such a thing, like your friend is going to mail that check and have an option in that. Or maybe you're positively motivated, and it's like, hey, when you accomplish this goal, you get to go on vacation, or you get to buy a Rolex, or like establishing, either consequences or goals, depending on, we all, how you're motivated and what's going to be the thing that drives you more, and figuring out, how to create motivation. The other thing is just to learn a lot. There's everything you need to know is on YouTube nowadays. I mean, if you just dedicate yourself between YouTube and, there's some other platforms out there that have like trainings and classes and stuff. There's so much online education today that anything you want to learn, if you're willing to just put in the time and not be great at first. See, the thing with humans is most of us, we don't want to be bad at something, so we just don't do anything new. And because, you got to be bad before you can be okay, and okay before you can be good, and good before you can be great, and great before you can be the best or whatever. And most people don't want to go through that process, so we just don't do anything new. But if you're willing to just be a student and submit yourself and be, go through that process, you just can't speed up time, and just figure out like stuff that you can master, instead of being a jack of all trades type of thing. It's like, what are you mastering? I heard from John Cheplack at an event, like, what do you master something, like nothing new until you master this thing that you're already doing. I mean, people are always looking for a new thing. So I think if anything is like, figure out how to motivate yourself, constantly try to up level your skills. Everything you need to know is already online today. And in most cases, you can get it pretty well for free or low cost. And, and just keep learning skills. And I think through that process, you'll figure out like what you love, where's your zone of genius. We all have one, it's like that thing that we're really good at, and kind of figuring out that just genius. But you just keep moving forward. And, I mean, I think books are a super underutilized resource, because you think about, man, sometimes people will write you their whole story and like every secret they know on earth for $11.95 or whatever. And it's like, you got to take advantage of that information that's out there, also through reading and through doing and through your own trials and tribulations and failures. Like, those are the stories and the experience that you need to have authority and to provide value and have stories and have stuff to talk about on social media. And all this is through your own life experiences and through your own doing and your own failures, and, taking what somebody else says is their path and kind of following that, and then finding your own tweaks and saying like, oh, I did this guy's thing, but I figured out a little bit ways to do it better. Message me if you want to learn what I improved on it or whatever thing, right? Like, I think just, people underestimate what you can do in like a day or a week, but maybe they overestimate what you can do in like a short period of time and underestimate what you can do in a long period of time. And I know for me, that's been super true, is just by staying on a path, and getting to a place of mastering whatever it is that you're trying to do versus being a jack of everything.
Wow. I love that, brother. That's just fire advice.
Appreciate it.
All right. I want to thank our audience for joining us today. I especially want to thank Nick for spending this amount of time. I know that you're a busy individual, and to come on the show and spend this time. And brother, like I've taken 2 pages of notes, and just like I got this whole thing. My Remarkable 2 is just full. And this is an epic interview. I really love this. So thanks for coming on. And if somebody wanted to reach out to you to connect, Nick, what would be the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, probably, on Facebook. My personal profile is facebook.com/NillaNick. Pretty simple way. On Instagram, I'm Bearded Marketer. Definitely check out the Relo LO show, reloshow.com. I think anybody in the mortgage business is going to get a ton of value. I mean, I'm probably somewhat biased, but I really, really, really strongly believe that everybody's going to get value out of watching those 6 episodes, and they're only 30 minutes a piece, and really see how Casey, the whole path that we took to try, our goal was to get $2 million of production in 90 days, and we did extremely well. I'll just say that. I want you to watch the episodes to get the number, but reloshow.com. I think everybody should be watching that show.
If you're a loan officer and you don't watch that, I think you're just stupid. Honestly, it's such a great show. I love how well produced it was too. I was talking to Casey about this, and look, he shared with me the number afterwards, and I'm not going to give it away either. I think you should absolutely watch it, but it's really incredible what you can do in just 90 days. If you just do the things that Nick was talking about, what motivates you, how can you up your skills? How can you learn something and really just execute and just go out and do it and get it done? I think it's an awesome show. I can't endorse Relo LO enough. And it's just super incredible. Brother, thank you again for coming on. This has really been great. And, all right, this has been the Get It Done podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And if you want to support the show, maybe you've taken some value from today, hey, do me a favor. Can you open up Apple Podcasts, scroll the way to the bottom and tap 5 stars? That'd be really freaking cool of you if you could do that. And it takes like 10 seconds. So hit that subscribe button, write us a 5-star review, tell a friend. All those things make a huge difference in helping us reach more people. Once again, I am Jimmy Ryan. This has been the Get It Done podcast. Thanks so much for listening.